it almost seems like it's going to force a higher floor under the price at some point.
Yeah, I really do. I think it could. And quite frankly, we talked earlier about whether or not we're running out of silver. Like I answered, I don't think so right now, but I can envision a time in the future, maybe not right now, and maybe not next year, where the supply of silver to the market becomes so tight and the above ground stocks get drawn down to a level to meet this growing demand, um, where the silver price could just shoot up. I mean, just go nuts.
Welcome back to Metals and Miners. I'm its founder and its host, Gary Bohm. We have a super important discussion today lined up that I'm very excited about. Today, we're fortunate to have with us the CEO of the Silver Institute, Michael DiRienzo. Michael's been the president for more than 20 years. The Silver Institute is located in Washington, D.C. It's a nonprofit international association that was formed in 1971. It serves the industries as the industry's voice in increasing public understanding of the many uses and values of silver. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet, Gary. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Let's begin our discussion with the silver supply deficit. The global silver deficit is expected to rise by about 17% to 250 million troy ounces in 2024 due to a 2% growth in demand led by a robust industrial consumption and a 1% fall in total supply. There's been a deficit for several years. However, that hasn't seemed to impact overall inventory and prices. What does the 215 million ounce supply deficit really mean for the silver market?
Well, it means we're in a deficit, and quite frankly, you know, we're doing a report later on this year on what price point can above ground stocks be mobilized in the event that we need more silver to fulfill these demand centers. I mean, quite frankly, when you look at silver and other commodities, but silver more so today, it's firing on almost all cylinders, okay? And it's got a good last couple of years. This year, from a price standpoint, has been stronger than a few years in the past. But nonetheless, demand is high. We do predict another record for industrial demand this year. And we predict, or we forecast, I should say, less silver mine supply coming to the market for a variety of reasons.
Well, you know, that's interesting that you just talk about the silver mining. It's been in the deficit for several years, yet most of the silver produced in 2023 came from base metal mines, with lead and zinc mines leading over primary silver mines and copper mines. In fact, more than 2/3 of global silver production comes from mines that aren't even primary silver producers. Michael, what are the dangers of this to the global economy, if any?
I don't know about dangers, but I mean, look, at silver's not driving the economy, right? I mean, people don't wake up in the morning and look at what the silver price is doing. They look at their stocks, they look at their equities, ETFs, mutual funds, and so forth. They look what the Dow is doing. Fact is that silver is not their particular driver, but it is a driver within the mining and hard asset complex. So people in those areas do take a look at silver. And, you know, quite frankly, you know, we're a little under $30 today. We've taken a hit today. But over the course of the last several weeks, the price has risen to a certain level, which we haven't really experienced in well over 10 years. So
Right.
I don't put too much weight into the gold silver ratio. A lot of people do. I don't put a lot of time into the deficit, while very important. The reason why is because there are enough above ground stocks to meet this demand. And they are being met right now by supply of above ground stocks. So look at the deficit will continue to grow, we think, this year, and it's good for silver. But, you know, there's one component we're missing on the silver side when it comes to investment, and that's institutional investment, which is now starting to perk its ears up and take a hard look at silver.
So speaking of those above ground inventories, they've probably prevented a physical squeeze from emerging in the market in spite of the robust supply demand conditions. Is there a point in the near future where you expect above ground inventories to become exhausted or
No,
depleted significantly? No.
no. I mean, you can read all the stuff on the internet, how we're running out of silver. There's no more silver yet. You can look at the Substacks and the Reddits and the people who are true believers, but they're sitting in their mom's basement just looking at data. No, I don't think we're going to run out of silver anytime shortly. I do think it could be squeezed to the point, not now, but down the road, where the above ground stocks, when you couple that with less supply, I mean, you mentioned earlier about, lead, zinc, copper, and gold mining. And that really equates for over about 72% of silver that comes to the above to the ground from mining. And silver itself from primary mines is only about 29%. And geopolitical reasons and other issues are in certain countries, leading silver mining countries, are affecting the amount of silver that's coming to the market. But do I think we're going to run out of silver? No, not now.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that answer. There's been solid U.S. silver demand recently. The headline total for U.S. was, I think, 118 million ounces, which was the fifth highest on record. It was also postulated that U.S. silver demand benefited greatly from the regional banking crisis last year. Mm-hmm. Do you expect further monetary or fiscal crises that could drive silver demand, or do you see mostly industrial applications as being the main driver in the near term?
Look, I think that people that are our followers, people that are our members, people who follow the market real closely are not putting all their eggs in the basket like some people on Reddit and Substack, for example, on these perceived banking closures. I mean, I read one the other day where it said the head of HSBC is resigning, buy silver. The head of JP Morgan is resigning, buy silver. When in fact, both those two gentlemen just said, you know what? I'm taking a look at retirement down the road. I'm not retiring now, but the headlines you see on these crappy sites, it's quite unbelievable. And quite frankly, no. I think if you're a silver player and you're interested in hard assets, don't put your eggs in the basket of banking closures. We're not ending the Fed, by the way. The U.S. Federal Reserve will be going on for many, many, many more years. I had this one guy get after me one time, and he said, "You've never used the hashtag end the Fed." And I said, yeah, because it's idiotic. It's idiotic. End the Fed. They said all the other precious metals associations do it. And I said, no, they don't. I can't imagine the World Gold Council that works with central banks talking to them about buying more gold, storing more gold. And they've been very successful in doing so over the course of the last 5 years. And the last year and a half, they've been spectacularly successful putting out a hashtag end the Fed. Just, you know what, claimed. It's just utter nonsense. Buy silver for what it is.
Yeah.
Did it hedge against inflation? Maybe not as much as it used to be. Is it a hard asset? Absolutely. Is it something that everybody should have in their portfolio? Yes.
Do you see a rotation in hard assets coming, away from financialized assets, tech, et cetera, to, more commodity-driven, hard asset, value-driven type assets?
I do, Gary. I mean, look it's getting a lot of interest. I mean, the prices aren't where they are today because of a silver squeeze online by Reddit users. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a combination of retail investors, institutional investors coming into the market. Now, with silver trailing gold, some can make that argument, but from a percentage standpoint, silver is doing a heck of a lot better this year than gold is, even though gold has made tremendous gains. But we're coming off a lower price point, but where we are today, I can't remember the two commodities that are ahead of us, or three, but we're third or fourth.
Hmm. So, Michael, in addition to the green and carbon neutral movement in the Western nations, the world's two largest nations, China and India, they're pursuing solar power in massive quantities. Solar panels require a
Mhm.
good bit of silver. How is the historic solar build out impacting silver? And do you expect the trend to continue and even escalate?
Well, I do think it will escalate. I mean, look at last year we had what about 193.5 million ounces of silver, according to our numbers and Metals Focus numbers. This year we think it's going to go to about 232 million ounces. And you only have to go back to 2015, where it was roughly 60 million ounces a year. This has been a systemic increase in
Mm,
demand for silver's use in
interesting.
solar. Now, are they thrifting out? They're trying to. But they can always come back to silver because it's the best metal. It's the best conductor of electricity. It's the best storage vehicle of energy for solar panels. So I think silver will always play a role in this application. And here's the funny thing. You just can't look at the IEA number that says, oh, the world and China and India, whomever, they've installed this many ounces of silver, I mean, solar panels, installations. So therefore, you can take your rough guess of how many grams or whatever per solar cell and come up with a number. I've spoken to many manufacturers, OEMs of solar panels that use silver. Each company is different. Each site is different. Each requirement from a customer is different. Some
Nice.
want double coated paste, some want single, some want less paste, some want more. You just can't look at a number and then times it by a
Yeah.
number that you came up with or that you read on the internet to says, oh, the Silver Institute is really, really short on its photovoltaic numbers. They're playing to the hands of the manufacturers. They're working with the Defense Department. They're working with whomever. Well, that's not true. None of my member companies want to lower silver price. Not one single member.
But
We're not the Silver Users Association. We're not Kodak. We're not people who use silver. We're people who want a higher silver price.
yeah, evidently you've gotten some pushback and I don't know, maybe some negative attention
All right.
since your survey, the way you're sharing some of these things. But what are the direct and indirect potential benefits for silver as it pertains to artificial intelligence and what's happening there?
That's a very, very good question. So, and silver will play a role. Will it be a real key role? I don't know. I mean, it will play a role because as AI begins to look at entities, or I should say, industries like healthcare, for example, maybe even the automotive, silver is going to play a role. If there's more electrical contacts that are needed, then
Hmm.
silver will obviously benefit.
Okay, well, so let's stay on that electrical contact concept. So, Michael, the key component of electrical and electronics is clearly silver. You've been talking about this since we started. To power the electrification movement, there really needs to be a lot of silver. I mean, like you said, they try to cut corners or they try to go to a different metal or an alternative, but they come back to silver because it is the most conductive. So in these industries, much is written about the two largest areas of silver demand, like you mentioned, photovoltaics and the automotive industry. But there's others, from power generation, process controls, breakers, contractors, and fuses. Can you speak into this in terms of the expected build out in the coming years and the role that silver is going to play?
Yeah, bear with me 1 second. I actually just wrote all this down just a few hours ago for a speech I'm giving in Singapore next week. And it's quite amazing. People look at the headline uses of silver, now it's photovoltaics, the greenification, climate change, and so forth. But I mean, a lot of people aren't really aware that, silver is in every computer, every laptop, printers,
Yeah.
printed circuit boards, your reflective glass, switches, brazing and soldering, silver, zinc, and oxide batteries, LED chips, wind and nuclear power. People forget about that. RFID chips, textiles, including athletic wear from companies like Nike, Adidas, and Lululemon, and washing machines, laundry detergent, maglev trains, catalysis for use in the petrochemical industry, and on and on and on. Not to mention jewelry and silverware and tableware, DVDs, 3D printing, health, antimicrobial instruments in hospitals, catheters, wood preservation, and of course, water purification.
And that's amazing. It's an amazing list, and it's a growing list. It is. I mean, as new electronic inventions come out, more and more and more silver is needed. And then, when I think about what's happening over in Asia, supposedly there's about 120 million citizens that are going to be brought into the consumer class over just the next 3 years. All of those people are going to be looking for all of the items that you just mentioned.
No, it's really true. And, you look at the electric vehicles or the hybrid vehicles, and you compare them to an internal combustion engine. Yes, there is silver in an ICE vehicle. Yes, there is silver in a hybrid. And yes, there is silver, of course, in an electric vehicle, mostly in the electrical components, infotainment systems, safety features, starting the car. I mean, everything revolves around silver. If you didn't have silver, your automobile wouldn't work. But just think how that can revolutionize the autonomous driving vehicles down the road, which will require more complex technology.
It almost seems like it's going to force a higher floor under the price at some point.
Yeah, I really do. I think it could. And quite frankly, we talked earlier about whether or not we're running out of silver. Like I answered, I don't think so right now, but I can envision a time in the future, maybe not right now, and maybe not next year, where the supply of silver to the market becomes so tight and the above ground stocks get drawn down to a level to meet this growing demand, where the silver price could just shoot up. I mean, just go nuts. I mean, silver is so volatile, as you know. I mean, it goes high and it comes down fast.
Yeah, so maybe even paralleling what's happened in uranium.
Right, it's a great analogy.
Yeah, okay. So you were mentioning a moment ago about these resistance levels that silver has broken through. Really, in the last few months, it's there was heavy resistance at every dollar level from like 26 through 30. Yeah. And it just kept breaking through. And it got up to like 32 and change, whatever, and it pulled back. And I know today it's gotten hit harder than it has since it was blasting through these resistance levels. But really, for the most part, it seems to be consolidating somewhere around that $30 range. Yeah, a little bit above, a little bit below. Mm-hmm. So my question is Michael, what is this price action over the last couple of months? What is that telling you?
Well, what it tells me is there's a lot of room for an even further spike in the silver price. I mean, that's what it tells me. The fact that it didn't go down to 26, 25, 23, sort of where we started off the year. I think the silver, like I mentioned earlier, has a lot of room to run. I think the fundamentals of the market, including the deficit, including the slowdown of mine supply, including what you referenced earlier, the number of applications and new applications that require silver that are coming to the marketplace, and solar power installations, it could really drive the price up higher.
Yeah, it's really an interesting time for silver. Let's talk about production costs. We've seen a further increase in silver production costs, taking it to around $20 to $25 an ounce in order for the mines to be profitable. It's a substantial increase since 2018. I think it's roughly around 50%.
Right.
More and more silver mines, they're also struggling with falling grades, higher labor, and G&A costs. What impact, in your opinion, will these higher production costs have on the price of silver and the mining equities? And does the price of silver have to go up quite a bit in order for silver mining to really be sustainable?
Well, I mean, we put out a report in April, so a month and a half ago, and when you look at all-in sustaining costs, we're looking at about $17. Okay, that's on average. Now you're
Okay.
right. There may be some mines that may be higher than that. There may be some mines that are lower.
Hmm.
It just depends. But quite frankly, and we talk in our report, the World Silver Survey 2024, about increased labor, regulation, energy costs, water costs, and so forth. But the companies are on top of it. I mean, they're running a business. This is their bread and butter. The price of
Exactly.
silver drives what they can do down the road, not only in operating the existing mine, but also with respect to exploration, finding new veins on existing properties or finding new strikes altogether. So the all-in sustaining cost is extremely important, and every mining company's CEO and their executive team looks at that just like any bank would look at a P&L and whatever. So it is their driving, it's their North Star,
Yeah.
and they're trying to either produce more um, or maintain their or reduce their cost.
With the higher all-in sustaining costs and the price movement that we've witnessed over the last couple of months, and the breakthrough of a very key resistance level that has held the price of silver in check for several years, do you think or do you foresee a significant round of buyouts and mergers and acquisitions coming at some point?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk to that because that's company specific, and we represent many of the major silver mining companies. And we also represent companies that don't necessarily consider themselves silver miners per se. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea. They certainly will not talk to me about their plans for acquisitions, mergers, or anything of that nature. So I wish I could answer that question. I just don't know.
I understand. So some believe that the silver equity prices remaining relatively low is an indication the rally's not sustainable. They have moved this year, though, but others believe that they're historically undervalued. What's your silver mining equity thesis?
I think they're historically undervalued.
Okay.
When you buy a mining company stock, you're buying not only that company, but you're buying their mine sites, you're buying the management, and you're buying the geopolitical risk where those mines operate. And quite frankly, at least from our members' perspective, they've got solid teams, and they're mining in mostly mining friendly countries. Uh, One of the hard things to do today, and just use the United States as an example, is to actually find a new resource and then get the permits at both the
Right.
local, state, and federal level.
Yeah.
And it could take 10 years
It's
before you
amazing.
can actually start your mining process. So that has to be built into the calculation down the road. And that even means when you have an existing property, if you have a mine in Alaska or Idaho or Nevada and you find a new strike, you got to apply for the permits to branch out. So it may not take as long because it's not a new property, but I tell you, from my perspective, and I've been to a lot of these mines myself, I mean, they're just extraordinarily well run by mining professionals and CEOs. And, I think they're all looking for the next big. We haven't had a really big silver discovery in many,
Right.
many years.
Well, that's outstanding to hear, about the management teams. I haven't met them personally, but I've looked at some of them and, their backgrounds are very high level. So I'd have to agree. But Michael, while industrial demand for silver is really skyrocketing, Western investors in particular, they've been net sellers of silver ETFs in recent years.
Mhm.
And silver dealers also have plenty of supply. Do you anticipate investor demand in the West to make a comeback? And what do you see as the likely catalyst or catalysts?
Um, that's a great question. Yeah, I do think there'll be a comeback there. And, it was just 2 years ago where we had a record physical investment for silver. So that's bars and coins. And you're right, we have seen over the course of the last 2 years a sell-off in the ETFs. It's not major. There's still lots of silver in the ETFs and the ETPs, I should say. Um, I don't know what the catalyst will be. I do think, though, there are several economic conditions that are facing the West and the world as a whole that could have an impact on gold and silver investment. Number one is in the United States, commercial real estate. It's a huge problem. And you mentioned bank closures and so forth down the road. I can't tell you if that's going to happen. I just don't put all my money in saying that it will.
Right.
The other is consumer debt, right? Consumer debt, credit card debt, record levels in the trillions of dollars. These could cause pain in the financial markets going forward. So at that point, I do believe there will be more interest in hard assets like precious metals. So that's one response.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that's in alignment with many of the experts that I've interviewed on this channel.
Yeah, I mean, look at the fact that the premiums on the American Eagle silver coin are down to about $2 or $3, whereas just a year and a half ago they were almost double the price of the coin.
Yeah.
So yes, there's plenty of silver out there to be purchased. Some companies are doing better than others, but their marketing teams have been doing exceptional work in letting the consumer and those who are uneducated in metals and precious metals per se, allowing them an opportunity or to at least look at the option.
So, Michael, there's been a lot of chatter about the pricing power for the precious metals moving from the West, the COMEX, to the East, to Shanghai. And lately, the Shanghai exchange price has been higher by a couple dollars or so, and really leading the West price in that direction. Do you see this as a shift taking place, the West to the East? And if so, what are the ramifications of that?
We've noticed this for years, and it's surprised that a lot of people are sort of just now discovering it. Look, the Silver Institute has been in China for over 20 years. We don't have an operation there. We don't have an office here, but we do an annual meeting with them. And we did it in 2001, shortly after that government allowed for its citizens to own gold and silver. So we got together with our executive team, went to China, signed some MOUs with their leading silver market players, and have been doing a conference with them for 20 years. Now, we haven't been able to go there since COVID, but we're going back this October. But we do things a lot, sharing of information electronically and through video and so forth. But yeah, there's no question. I think it's more so in the gold market than it is in silver. But look what the China banks are doing. Look what their central bank and the PBOC, they are really stockpiling gold like it's nobody's business. And they're buying a lot of silver as well. The average Chinese individual is buying silver. It's much easier to buy silver, obviously, from the price point than it is gold. So yeah, do I think it's going to consolidate there forever? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is this shift has been taking place for about 10 years. We didn't just wake up and read some Reddit or Substack user who said, oh, look at here. This clearly defines that the West has lost its power over gold and silver. We'll always have a hand in it. London will always be local London. But Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, making a strong play for the East being the power player in the precious metals market.
So is it more of, instead of like a solo hegemon, like people talk about with the US dollar, where we had that, we'll call it pricing power over the precious metals back when it was just here and in London, more of a multipolar world scenario. Is that what you're pointing to?
Yeah, I think it is. And a lot of people write, and I think they could be very right about this, but they write and they opine that this has to do with the US dollar. They're going to squeeze out the US dollar, and I don't see that happening right now. But a lot of crazy stuff has happened in the last 10 years, so you just don't know.
That is true.
But it's clearly on the table. But
all the more reason to hedge and protect with precious metals in a portfolio.
I totally agree. I completely agree.
Do you have a an allocation amount, 10%? Ray Dalio says own 10% in gold in your portfolio. Do you have an allocation amount of gold and silver that you think is a necessary component to hedge?
Yeah, so we don't give out investment advice, but
of
off the
course,
record, anywhere between 8 and 12%
yeah,
in precious metals. And it just makes sense,
it
right?
does make sense.
We're living in really rocky times. The issues I mentioned before with credit card debt, commercial real estate, that's not just a USA concern, that's global. And it's been going on for ages, but the pandemic really sped this dilemma up. So, yeah, I think that while I don't put all my money in the fact that I think banks are going to close and Jamie Dimon's resigning tomorrow and the head of HSBC is resigning 2 days afterward, not that that would matter. Who cares if they retire? How is that going to affect the silver market? Just give me one reason how that's going to affect the silver market. So there's so many people out there who just say, JP Morgan is tamping down the price of silver, HSBC, Bank of America, holding all the silver, pounding it down every time their desk's open. And, JP Morgan serves as a custodian, I think, for 9 out of 10 of the largest ETPs holding silver in the world. They have to buy silver, okay? They buy it and they store it. They store it with other storage facilities, but they're the conduit between the ETF and the storage facility. They buy the silver, it goes to the facility. That could be London, it could be United States, it could be elsewhere.
I've heard this same perspective, repeatedly through the years. Rick Rule talks about this in the sense where he'll say, there could be some manipulation here and there. I'm sure there is, but it applies on the way up as much as it applies on the way down. So
I totally agree. And people who argue that JP or others are manipulating the market actually have some feet to stand on, right? Because we've seen evidence over the years. JP Morgan on the gold side, the silver gentlemen who were spoofing the market, and a whole host of other entities within their portfolio have been fined over the years. So, yes, is it everybody who's doing it? I don't know. We regularly talk with the CFTC here in the States just to find out what's going on. Anything on the horizon. They're not going to tell us, but it's good to keep that open door rolling.
So, Michael, you were talking about, the allocation of 8 to 12%, and I know that's off the record. So the average person, owns less than 1/2% in their portfolio of gold and silver. In your analysis, what role will inflation being higher for longer, which clearly is going to remain for long, play for investors when it comes to silver? Will they come to eventually see silver as a hedge against inflation and currency debasement and needed to preserve purchasing power versus the dollar, which is buying less and less these days? Do you see a reversion to the mean here from that less than 1%?
So I think a couple things have to happen first, and I'm not an economist, so I can't get into the weeds on this, but I think what you're going to have to see is some sort of pain in the global markets, right? You're going to have to see a recession. You're going to have to see a shock. Something like we experienced in 2011, 2008, 2001, and again in 2000. That is going to be the catalyst for precious metals. And I don't know, is that tomorrow? Is that 2 years from now? I mean, gold and silver have not been reacting to inflation at all. You can't point to one chart that they've been inflationary metals. I mean, this is not the 1970s, and gold and silver are not your grandfather's Oldsmobile, where they really reacted to inflation. They're not acting that way. They're not reacting. And in some cases, it's actually hurt the gold and silver purchase power. So I would look more at potential recessions, economic pain, and geopolitical uprisings. And we're facing two major issues across the globe right now. Let's just say something else could happen in Russia or in China. So I think that would also affect the markets per se. But let's just face it. Is taking the Dow, for example, in the U.S. stock market, how long can this party last?
I mean, I'm with you.
How long can this party last? Why is everybody buying NVIDIA stock? I mean, the prices keeps going up and up and up, and I call them lemmings, all right? If you bought at 150, if you bought at 200, you did great. But if you're buying now at 1100 or damn near 1200, you missed the party.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate your perspective on these things, Michael, and it's been a wonderful conversation. And before we wrap up here and I ask you the final question, I just want to point everyone over to our Substack. It's free. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post free content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and all the expert interviews that we conduct, just like this one. And when you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote, and it's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise titled, "If you don't own gold, you know neither history nor economics." This free gift is a must read for everyone on why we all should own gold and, mind you, silver too. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address to subscribe, and receive this free gift on us. Also, I'm positive that you've enjoyed this conversation with Michael as much as I have. Please let him know. Hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment below the video. Michael, in wrapping up our discussion, my final question is about silver as a currency. Silver, it's a real store of value. It has endless uses. It's always energy related base value. It even had a currency status for thousands of years. In the US, it was currency until the dollar became convertible to gold. And it's been a long time, admittedly, in this country since silver was considered currency. But states have begun, again, trying to point to that Constitution where the founders outlined that gold and silver are real money, not just a collectible as the authorities want us to believe it is today. So what is the probability that at some point in the near future, silver will once again regain currency status in some form or fashion? Not that we'll go on a silver standard, but some form or fashion.
Well, one of the things we have worked on in the past was parity for gold, silver, platinum, palladium investments, the four major precious metals, with respect to capital gains taxes. There's absolutely no reason in the world, while an American Eagle gold or silver coin is considered a collectible. It's neither rare, there's no numismatic value to it. It is an investment tool. Same thing with a bar of gold or a bar of silver. It's just an anomaly in the tax code. And we tried to get this changed. We got really close in 2006. I mean, really, really close. If the bill that contained the amendment that was written by former Senator Harry Reid from Nevada, if that bill had been led by the conference committee in the Senate instead of the House, that would have been taken care of by now. But it was led in the House, and the House had very strict rules on what had passed the House or the Senate. It didn't pass the House, but it did pass the Senate on the floor. So we got squeezed out of that. Quite frankly, I love what the Citizens for Sound Money are doing. I love what these states are doing with respect to sales taxes. There should be no reason in the world, like I mentioned before, that these are treated as collectibles. They should be treated like any other mutual fund or hard asset. Now, the irony is, in the U.S. government, is that gold and silver are treated like investments when it comes to IRAs. When you can put gold and silver as an investment into your IRA. And the same rules to apply to other stocks and equities that you buy in your IRA. The gold and silver within your IRA is taxed accordingly along with those others. So one hand of the tax code says it's a collectible, the other says it's an investment. I just don't know at the federal level what it's going to take to get this through, because I know that the World Gold Council is engaging a new effort, maybe not so much on the capital gains side, but they're doing some work on tax issues as it affects gold. And if it affects gold, then it would affect silver, right? You can't just say gold gets it, but not silver, palladium, and platinum. So a lot of work left to be done on this. I'm encouraged by what we're seeing in the States. I think it's rotten what's happening in our tax code, or not what's happening, what has been done for 40, 50 years.
Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective and your fight. And I do think at some point there's a good chance that all this will be successful in some way, shape, or form. Michael, thank you for coming on to the Metals and Miners podcast and for being so generous with your time, analysis, and ideas. It's been so good to spend this time with you. Would you please share with the viewers any final thoughts that you want to leave with those tuning in, where they could learn more about yours and the Silver Institute's work and how they can connect with you?
Sure, absolutely. You can connect with us at our website, silverinstitute.org, and on the bottom you can sign up for our press releases and other reports that we put out throughout the year. We're also on X, it's at Silver Institute, and we also have a dedicated page on LinkedIn. You can call me anytime at the Institute. The number's on the website, and I'd be happy to chat with your listeners about silver. And I thank you for the opportunity, Gary.
Yeah, wonderful. I'll put all that information up on the screen for everyone to have access to it. There'll be links in our description. Everybody go follow the Silver Institute. If you're interested in silver and the investment and sound money, this is an important follow. I look forward to having you back on sometime in the future, Michael.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us, and everybody else, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
I just want to point everyone over to our Substack. It's free. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post free content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and all the expert interviews that we conduct, just like this one. And when you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote, and it's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise titled, "If you don't own gold, you know neither history nor economics." This free gift is a must read for everyone on why we all should own gold and, mind you, silver too. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address to subscribe, and receive this free gift on us.